My sister banned me from her wedding because her fiancé had feelings for me. Then everything fell apart. Imagine helping plan your sister's dream wedding, only to be told you're no longer welcome because her fiancé confessed he had feelings for you. Nina had always been the dramatic one, the one with big ideas, louder opinions, and an energy that sucked up every room. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the sister in the background, making sure the details worked so she could shine. And that's exactly what I was doing when she got engaged. When she announced her wedding to Evan, I was genuinely happy for her. He seemed like a good guy, charming, respectful, a little too polished, maybe, but thoughtful in his own way. He'd always treated me kindly, which I appreciated. We weren't close, but we had shared enough laughs over wine at family dinners for me to think well of him. Nina asked me to be her maid of honor, and I said yes without hesitation. I spent nights researching venues, organizing bridal shower ideas, managing RSVP lists when she was overwhelmed. She called me her anchor and the best sister in the world. I didn't do it for compliments. I did it because she was my sister. Because I loved her. The wedding was planned for early fall. Golden leaves, crisp air, fairy lights in a vineyard. It was all Nina's dream come true, and I was determined to help make it perfect. I took time off work, drove her to appointments, dealt with vendors who were late or overcharging. She'd always been impulsive. I was the one who made things run. But about 6 weeks before the wedding, something shifted. Nina's tone changed. She stopped including me in certain decisions. She started sending shorter texts. One night, she called to say she'd ask someone else to help with the seating chart because I seemed too busy. I told myself she was just stressed. Brides get weird before weddings, right? Then came the awkward silences. The moments when I'd walk into the room and conversations would stop. Evan began acting strange too. Less talkative. More distant. In a way I couldn't quite define. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was overthinking. But deep down, something in my gut began to twist. The closer the big day came, the more things started to unravel. The first real sign that something was wrong came during Nina's second dress fitting. I had driven her there, helped carry her massive gown in the back seat, and waited nearly 40 minutes while she tried on options. When she finally stepped out, looking radiant in a lace-covered silhouette she had adored for months, I told her she looked beautiful. She didn't respond. She just glanced at her reflection and said, "Yeah, I guess it's okay." I tried to laugh it off, asked if she was nervous. She shrugged and went back behind the curtain. That was it. No excitement. No warmth. Like I wasn't even there. That evening, I called her. I told her I'd noticed a shift and asked if everything was all right. She said she was just overwhelmed. Too many decisions. She mumbled. Too many people in my ear. I offered to help more, or back off if that's what she needed. She just said, "It's fine, Claire," and hung up. I stared at my phone, confused and a little hurt, but again, I told myself it was wedding stress. I had read all about this kind of stuff online. Sisters bickering, brides snapping at loved ones. It was normal. At least, I hoped it was. The next few days, the coldness intensified. I arrived early to a tasting appointment, only to find out Nina had canceled it without telling me. When I messaged her, she said, "Didn't think it was worth your time." I didn't know what that meant. I had never missed a single meeting. Not one. That weekend, she hosted a small bridal gathering with a few close friends. I wasn't invited. When I found out through one of the bridesmaids, I tried calling Nina. No answer. I felt like the floor was shifting under me, slowly and deliberately. Then came the glances. Evan had always been relaxed around me, maybe a little flirty in a harmless way, but recently he seemed uncomfortable. He avoided eye contact, didn't say much when we crossed paths. Once, at a family barbecue, He was sitting beside Nina when I walked over to bring her a drink. As soon as I approached, he stood up and walked away without a word. Nina looked at me for a second, then turned to talk to someone else. I stood there, holding a glass of lemonade, pretending everything was okay. I tried to talk to our mom, hoping maybe she had insight. But she just said, "You know how Nina gets. Maybe give her some space." I nodded, smiled, and swallowed the frustration building in my throat. Everyone was treating me like I had done something wrong, and no one would tell me what it was. I started second-guessing every interaction, every joke I'd made, every compliment I had given Evan. Did I cross some invisible line? Was I being too present? Too involved? My mind raced with questions, none of which had answers. I stopped sleeping. I stopped smiling. I thought it was just stress. I was wrong. The message came on a Wednesday night. I was finishing up dishes when my phone buzzed. It was from Nina. Just 4 words. "Can you come over?" That was it. No emojis. No context. I hesitated for a moment, then grabbed my jacket and keys. Maybe this was finally the conversation we needed. Maybe she'd tell me what was going on. Maybe we'd fix it. When I got there, the house was dark, except for a small lamp in the living room. Nina was sitting on the edge of the couch, back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her face was expressionless. No hug. No greeting. She motioned for me to sit down. I did, heart pounding. "I need to ask you something," she said, looking straight ahead, "and I want you to be honest." I nodded slowly. "Of course." She took a breath, then exhaled sharply, like she was steadying herself. "Did anything ever happen between you and Evan?" My heart stopped. For a second, I couldn't process the question. I blinked, then frowned. "What?" "No, of course not." She turned toward me now, her eyes sharp, lips pressed together. "Don't lie to me, Clara. I need to know the truth." I sat up straighter, my voice trembling. "I swear, Nina, nothing ever happened. I would never do that to you. Ever." She looked at me for a long time, then stood up and started pacing. "He told me he thinks about you, that he's confused, that sometimes he wonders what it would have been like with you instead of me." Her voice cracked on the last part. "He said you've always been safe to him, and that scares me." I felt sick. My body went cold. I had no idea he'd said any of that. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that she'd twisted his words, but the pain on her face told me this was real. I stood up, reached for her arm. "Nina, I never encouraged anything. I didn't know he felt that way. I swear to you." She pulled away. "Whether you knew or not doesn't matter." He said it. "And now, every time I look at you, I wonder if you were waiting for this to happen." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "That's not fair. I've done everything for you. I've been here every step. This isn't my fault." She crossed her arms. "I need space. I don't want you at the wedding. I can't have you there, Clara." I froze. "What?" She didn't waver. "I'm sorry. It's better this way." My knees felt weak. I looked around the room where we'd once picked floral arrangements and joked about dance playlists. I barely recognized it anymore. And just like that, I went from maid of honor to unwanted guest. I left her house in silence. No shouting. No final word. Just the sound of my footsteps on the pavement and my heartbeat crashing in my ears. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at the steering wheel, trying to understand how everything had flipped so fast. I hadn't done anything wrong, but somehow I had become the villain. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. I couldn't face people asking how the wedding planning was going. I didn't answer texts from bridesmaids. I deleted the shared folder where we'd kept all the details, dress fittings, color palettes, guest lists. It all felt poisonous now. like touching it might make it worse. The worst part was the silence from my parents. They knew something had happened. Nina must have told them, but neither of them called. Not even a message to ask if I was okay. I finally called my mom 3 days later. She answered on the second ring. "Hi," she said, voice flat. "I'm guessing you heard," I said. She paused, then replied, "Nina told us what happened. She's under a lot of pressure, Clara." That was it. No defense. No concern. Just another version of be understanding. I told her I was devastated, that I felt betrayed, that I had done nothing wrong. She sighed. "You know how sensitive she is. Just let her have this moment." I hung up feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. It was like the whole family had decided to exile me for something I hadn't even done. I kept thinking back on moments, trying to find signs that Evan had been crossing lines, that maybe I had missed something. But the truth is, he was careful, subtle, and I never once encouraged it. A week later, I got a call from one of Nina's friends. She sounded hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should even be talking to me. "I just thought you should know," she said. "Evan's been messaging one of the other bridesmaids." "A lot." I blinked. "What do you mean, a lot?" She cleared her throat. "Like, flirty. Uncomfortable. He's denying it. But people are talking." My stomach twisted. The pieces started clicking into place. It wasn't just about me. Evan had been pushing boundaries with more than one person. But I was the easiest target. The one Nina could blame without having to question everything. I was a scapegoat for a problem they didn't want to face. The cracks in their perfect story started to show. 2 days before the wedding, I got another call, this time from my cousin Maya, who had just arrived in town for the ceremony. "Have you talked to Nina?" she asked. I told her I hadn't. "Well," she continued carefully, "there's a situation." One of the bridesmaids showed her screenshots. Evan sent her late-night messages. Nothing explicit, but inappropriate. And she showed Nina everything. I stood frozen in my kitchen. Maya didn't need to say more. Nina knew now. She had proof. The thing that had nearly destroyed our relationship, the lie that had pushed me out, had just unraveled in her hands. I asked Maya what Nina had said. "She's not talking to anyone. She locked herself in the guest room at your parents' house. The wedding might be off." Later that night, my mom finally called. Her voice was shaky. "Your sister. She's devastated." Evan admitted some of it. Not all, but enough. "She doesn't know what to do." I didn't ask her why she was calling me now, after ignoring me for weeks. I just listened. "She asked if you would talk to her," she added. I felt a wave of emotions rise in my throat. Pain, anger, betrayal, exhaustion. I asked for a moment to think. I drove to my parents' house the next morning. My hands shook the whole way there. When Nina opened the door, she looked nothing like the bride-to-be I had last seen. Her hair was a mess, her face swollen from crying. She stepped aside to let me in without a word. We sat in silence for minutes. "I'm sorry," she finally said. Her voice cracked like glass. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have believed him. I shouldn't have blamed you." I didn't respond at first. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to forgive. But some things don't disappear just because someone finally says sorry. "You humiliated me," I said quietly. "You turned me into the problem, and I never was." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. I was scared. When he said he thought about you, I panicked. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to believe he was that kind of man." I sighed. "But you were willing to lose me instead." The wedding still happened, technically. The guests came. The flowers arrived. But Evan didn't show. Nina canceled at the last second. No ceremony. No vows. Just a crowd of confused relatives and a bride who spent the night sobbing in her childhood bed. The wedding still happened, but not the way they planned. Weeks passed before I felt like I could breathe again. I went back to work, reconnected with friends, threw myself into routines that had nothing to do with wedding dresses, color schemes, or emotional damage. I didn't talk to Nina much after that day. Not because I hated her, but because I needed space. Real space. The kind that heals. She sent a few messages. Mostly short, apologetic. I didn't ignore her, but I didn't encourage more either. It wasn't that I couldn't forgive her. It was that I no longer trusted the version of love our family had raised us with. The version that excuses betrayal if it's wrapped in the word family. My parents never really acknowledged their part in it. They quietly shifted back into their old selves like nothing had happened. I could tell they were relieved the wedding had imploded before the truth got any darker. But they never truly stood up for me. Not once. And that changed something in me. Something permanent. One night, I sat alone on my balcony with a glass of wine, thinking about the last few months. I thought about how quickly love turns to doubt, how silence becomes its own kind of betrayal, and how sometimes the hardest part isn't being blamed. It's realizing the people who should have known better chose not to. I don't know if Nina will ever truly see how much she hurt me. I don't know if Evan ever felt guilt or just moved on to his next target. But I do know this. I survived it. I walked through the fire and came out on the other side. Burned, yes, but stronger. Clearer. I learned that boundaries are more sacred than blood. That self-respect is louder than apology. That sometimes healing comes not from reconciliation, but from walking away with your head high and your dignity intact. And now I ask you, the one listening to this, if your own sister betrayed you over a lie, would you ever forgive her? Or would you finally choose peace over family?